Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics.
Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. Today, on Tuesday, May 7th, we commemorate Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene, and the only newly revealed martyrs of Lesbos who appeared on Bright Tuesday. The removal of the relics of St. Athanasius the Great, which is moved to this feast day. The commemoration of the precious cross that appeared in the sky over Jerusalem in 351. St. Cyril, Archbishop of Jerusalem. St. Athanasius, the centurion of Byzantium. The repose of St. Nicholas, the abbot of Sora, and St. Pachomius, the new martyr of Patmos.
Regarding Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene, and the other newly revealed martyrs of Lesbos. On the island of Mytilene, Lesbos in ancient times, near the village of Thermi, the villagers had a custom of ascending a certain hill on this day to celebrate the divine liturgy in the ruins of a small chapel, although no one knew whence this tradition had sprang, that being on Bright Tuesday, the Tuesday after Pascha. In the year 1959, certain villagers began seeing persons who spoke to them, first in dreams, then awake, both by day and by night. Through these wondrous appearances, which were given to many people independently, the holy martyrs Raphael, archimandrite of the ancient monastery, and Nicholas, his deacon, together with other saints who had been martyred on the island, told the villagers the whole account of their martyrdom, which had taken place at the hand of the Muslim Turks 10 years after the fall of Constantinople in 1463. The 12-year-old Irene had been tortured, then burned alive in a large earthenware jar in the presence of her parents. On Tuesday Renewal week, that is Bright Week, St. Raphael had been tied to a tree and his head sawn off through his jaws. St. Nicholas had died at the sight of this. Although the feast is celebrated today because it is the day of their martyrdom, through the appearances of the saints as living persons 500 years after their martyrdom, it is also a singular testimony to the resurrection of Christ. While their feast takes place on April 9th, it is commemorated always on Bright Tuesday. On Lesbos you strove in contest for the sake of Christ God. You also have hallowed her with the discovery of your relics, O blessed ones. O God-bearer Raphael, with you we all honor Nicholas the deacon and Irene the chaste virgin as our divine protectors who now intercede with the Lord. You shone on the world like stars, first as ascetics, then as athletes slain for Christ, and were translated to the heights to the great torments that you endured, and them that praise you and keep and protect, O saints.
Regarding Saints Athanasius the Great, in the half-century after the First Ecumenical Council held in Nicaea in 325, if there was one man whom the Arians feared and hated more intensely than any other, as being able to lay bare the whole error of their teachings, and to marshal, even from exile or hiding, the beleaguered forces of the Orthodox, it was Saint Athanasius the Great. This blazing lamp of orthodoxy, which imperial power and the heretics' plots could not quench when he shone upon the lampstand, nor find when he was hid by the people and monks of Egypt, was born in Alexandria about the year 296. He received an excellent training in Greek letters and especially in the sacred scriptures, of which he shows an exceptional knowledge in his writings. Even as a young man, he had a remarkable depth of theological understanding. He was only about 20 years old when he wrote his treatise on the Incarnation. Keeping in mind, On the Incarnation is one of the most powerful writings that we have because there are two things in it that are important. One, he writes, that which is not assumed is not saved, meaning that if Christ had not assumed our death and the entirety of our humanity, we would not be saved. He had to completely become human in order to save us. And the second, which is perhaps more important, is God became man so that man could become like God. Saint Athanasius in this work tells us the meaning of life, tells us everything that we should be seeking. Saint Alexander, Archbishop of Alexandria, brought him up in piety, ordained him as deacon, and after deposing Arius for his blasphemy against the divinity of the Son of God, took Athanasius to the first council in Nicaea in 325. Saint Athanasius was to spend the remainder of his life laboring in defense of this holy council. In 326, before his death, Alexander appointed Athanasius his successor. It should be noted that at the First Ecumenical Council, there were giants of the faith, Saint Nicholas, Saint Spiridon. But Saint Athanasius was only a deacon at this, and he was the commanding voice of the Orthodox. In 325, Arius had been condemned by the Council of Nicaea, yet through his hypocritical confession of Orthodox belief, St. Constantine the Great was persuaded by Arius' supporters that he should be received back into the communion of the Church. But Athanasius, knowing well the perverseness of his mind and the disease of heresy lurking in his heart, refused communion with Arius. The heresiarch followers then began framing false charges against Athanasius. Finally, St. Constantine the Great, misled by grave charges of the saint's misconduct, which were completely false, had him exiled to Tiberias in Gaul in 336. When St. Constantine was succeeded by his three sons, Constantine II, Constans, and Constantius, in 337, St. Athanasius returned to Alexandria in triumph. But his enemies found an ally in Constantius, Emperor of the East, and he spent a second exile in Rome. It was ended when Constans prevailed with threats upon his brother Constantius to restore Athanasius. For 10 years, St. Athanasius strengthened orthodoxy throughout Egypt, visiting the whole country and encouraging all, clergy, monastics, and layfolks, being loved by all as a father. After Constantine's death in 350, Constantius became sole emperor, and Athanasius was again in danger. On the evening of February 8, 356, General Syrianus, with more than 5,000 soldiers, surrounded the church in which St. Athanasius was serving and broke open the doors. St. Athanasius' clergy begged him to leave, but the good shepherd commanded that all the flock should withdraw first, and only when he was assured of their safety, he also, protected by divine grace, passed through the midst of the soldiers and disappeared into the deserts of Egypt, where for some 6 years he eluded the soldiers and spies sent after him. When Julian the Apostate succeeded Constantius in 361, Athanasius returned again, but only for a few months. Because Athanasius converted many pagans and the priests of the idols in Egypt wrote to Julian that if Athanasius remained, idolatry would perish in Egypt, the heathen emperor ordered not St. Athanasius' exile, but his death. St. Athanasius took a ship up the Nile. When he learned that his imperial pursuers were following him, he had his men turn back, and as his boat passed that of his pursuers, they asked him if he had seen Athanasius. "He is not far," he answered. After returning to Alexander for a while, he fled again to the Thebaid until Julian's death in 363. St. Athanasius suffered his fifth and last exile under Valens in 365, which only lasted 4 months because Valens, fearing a sedition among the Egyptians for the beloved Archbishop, revoked his edict in February 366. The great St. Athanasius passed the remaining 7 years of his life in peace. Of his 57 years as patriarch, he had spent some 17 in exiles, shining from the heights of his throne like a radiant evening star and enlightening the Orthodox with the brilliance of his words, for yet a little while this much-suffering champion inclined towards the sunset of his life, and in the year 373 he took his rest from his lengthy sufferings, but not before another luminary of the truth, St. Basil the Great, had risen in the East, being consecrated Archbishop of Caesarea in 370, showing us that Christ our God never leaves us orphans, but always provides us with adequate fathers and mothers for our edification. Besides all of his other achievements, St. Athanasius wrote the life of St. Anthony the Great, with whom he spent time in his youth, ordained St. Frumentius, first bishop of Ethiopia, and in his Paschal encyclical for the year 367, set forth books of the Old and New Testament accepted by the Church as canonical. St. Gregory the Theologian, in his oration on the great Athanasius, said he was angelic in appearance, more angelic in mind, rebuking with tenderness as a father, praising with the dignity of a ruler. Everything was harmonious, as an air upon a single lyre, and in the same key. His life, his teaching, his struggles, his dangers, his return, and his conduct after his return, he treated so mildly and gently those who had injured him, that even they themselves, if I may say so, did not find his restoration distasteful. Shining forth with works of orthodoxy, you quenched every false belief in teaching and became trophy bearers and conquerors, since you made all things rich with true piety, greatly adorning the church with magnificence, Saints Athanasius and wise Cyril. You both have worthily found Christ God, who doth grant great mercy unto all. O great hierarchs of piety and brave champions of the Church of Christ, you watch over all who sing, save us who in faith honor you, O compassionate. Regarding the commemoration of the precious cross that appeared in the sky over Jerusalem in 351 AD. On this day, in the year 351, not long after Cyril had succeeded Maximus as Archbishop of Jerusalem, during the reign of Constantius, the son of St. Constantine the Great, on the day of Pentecost, the sign of the cross appeared over Jerusalem. St. Cyril, in his letter to the Emperor Constantius, says, "At about the 3rd hour of the day, an enormous cross, formed of light, appeared in the heaven above the holy Golgotha, and reaching to the Mount of Olives, being seen not by one or two only, but manifest with perfect clarity to the whole multitude of the city, not, as one might suppose, rushing swiftly past in fancy, but seen openly above the earth many hours in plain sight, and overcoming the beams of the sun with its dazzling rays. The image of thy cross at this time shone brighter than the sun, when thou didst spread it out from the holy Mount of Olives to Calvary, and in making plain thy might which is therein, O Saviour, thou didst also thereby strengthen the faithful. Keep us always in peace, by the intercessions of the Theotokos, O Christ our God, and save us."
From St. Paul's letter to the Hebrews. Brethren, remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their lives, and imitate their faith. Meaning that our leaders, our hierarchs, our clergy, theirs is supposed to be a life of faith. And the outcome of their life, whether it is through martyrdom, whether it is through being repudiated by the world, whether it is being scoffed at by the world, they stood strong in their faith. And we see the miracles that came because of it. And we see the reward that awaits them for teaching the faith. As Christ said, "He who teaches and does shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven." Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever, meaning that the teachings of who and what Jesus Christ is not malleable. Christ does not change depending on the mores of the time. To say that, oh, well, Jesus Christ would be different today because there are different social ramifications of what is going on. No, Jesus Christ is forever the same because he is our God and he is the truth. Truth is not malleable. He is the truth. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is well that the heart be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited their adherents, meaning that our body is strengthened by food, and that allows us to work. It allows us to do the things that we need to do. But grace strengthens our souls and allows us to move forward in life and beyond. We have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp. So Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Christ was the final sacrifice. Therefore, let us go forth to him outside the camp and bear the abuse he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city which is to come. This is the Jerusalem on high. Through him, then, let us continually offer up sacrifice of praise to God, that is, the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Whenever we give of ourselves, God always richly rewards us in turn.
From the Gospel according to St. Luke. At that time, Peter rose and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home, wondering at what had happened. That very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Now, it must be noted that both Cleopas and Luke, who are the two men walking here, knew Jesus Christ. They're among the 70. And so it is not as if they did not know Jesus or had interactions with him. And even though they were not part of the 12, but part of the 70, they still had daily dealings with the Lord. They knew who the Lord was. The fact that Jesus is unrecognizable to them is on purpose, and we will see why in just a moment. And he said to them, "What is this conversation which you are holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since this happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body.
And they came back, saying that they had even seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, O foolish men, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. Now imagine that. Jesus Christ is giving St. Luke and St. Cleopas a Bible study. You could not ask for a better teacher. He is unlocking every prophecy about himself. St. Nectarios, in his masterwork Christology, posits that there are over 400 individual prophecies about Jesus Christ, and he is unlocking them on their walk. And so they drew near to the village to which they were going. He appeared to be going further, but they constrained him, saying, Stay with us, for it is towards evening, and the day is now far spent. So he went in to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them. This is symbolic of the mystical supper in which Jesus Christ takes the bread, breaks it, and says, This is my body. So what is he doing? He is symbolizing communion, the Holy Eucharist. And their eyes were opened and they recognized him, and he vanished out of their sight. Now this is important because notice, he did not appear to them, he was not recognizable to them during the Bible study, during the time that he was unlocking things, in which it would be scholarly interpretation of Jesus Christ. No, it is in the sacramental reality, meaning that we experience and know Christ through his holy mysteries more than the intellectual exercise of exploring and studying Christ. This is extremely important because it means that regardless of our aptitude for education, we can know Christ. This is why it is possible for someone that has extreme learning disabilities or is developmentally handicapped, and yet they are able to have just as much, if not more, communion and an understanding of who Jesus Christ is than someone that just reads about Christ. They said to each other, Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures? Meaning that learning about Christ is good. That doesn't mean that we should not study scripture, that we should not study theology. It burns within us. It lights a fire inside of us. But that is not true knowledge. That is excitement. That is something that we can use. But it is through the mysteries, it is through Holy Communion, the sacrament of sacraments, the mystery of mysteries, that we truly know Christ. The Orthodox faith is an experiential religion. And they rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 gathered together, and those who were with them, who said, The Lord has risen indeed, and has appeared to Simon. Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. From St. Paul's
I hope
letter
that you've
to
enjoyed
the
today's spiritual calisthenics. Have a
Brethren,
blessed and
remember
wonderful
your
day.
leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their lives and imitate their faith. Meaning that our leaders, our hierarchs, our clergy, theirs is supposed to be a life of faith. And the outcome of their life, whether it is through martyrdom, whether it is through
I hope that you've enjoyed
by the
today's spiritual
world,
calisthenics.
whether it being
Have a
scoffed at
blessed
by the world,
and wonderful
they
day.
stood strong in their faith. And we see the miracles that came because of it. And we see the reward that awaits them for teaching the faith. As Christ said, He who teaches and does shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday
I
and
hope
today.
that you enjoyed today's spiritual
forever.
calisthenics. Have a blessed
And the
and
teachings of
wonderful
who
day.
and what Jesus Christ is not malleable. Christ does not change depending on the mores of the time. To say that, oh, well, Jesus Christ would be different today because there are different social ramifications of what is going on. No, Jesus Christ is forever the
I hope
same.
that you've enjoyed today's spiritual
Because he is our
calisthenics.
God.
Have a blessed
He is the
and
truth.
wonderful
Truth
day.
is not malleable. He is the truth. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is well that the heart be strengthened by grace, not by foods, which have not benefited their adherents, meaning that our body is strengthened by food.
I hope that you've
allows us
enjoyed
to
today's
work,
spiritual
allows us to do the
calisthenics.
things that we need
Have a
to do.
blessed
But
and
grace
wonderful day.
strengthens our souls and allows us to move forward in life and beyond. We have an altar for which those who serve the tent have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned
I hope
outside
that
the
you've
camp.
enjoyed today's spiritual
So
calisthenics.
Jesus also
Have a
suffered
blessed
outside the
and
gate
wonderful
in
day.
order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Christ was the final sacrifice. Therefore, let us go forth to him outside the camp and bear the abuse he endured. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city which
I
is
hope
to
that
come.
you've enjoyed
This is
today's
the
spiritual
Jerusalem
calisthenics.
on high.
Have a blessed and
Through
wonderful
him,
day.
then, let us continually offer up sacrifice of praise to God, that is, the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Whenever we give of ourselves, God always
I hope that you've
richly
enjoyed
rewards
today's
us.
spiritual